And I just want to welcome everybody. My name is Joanna. I'm the project manager to get the site up and running. I've got Kim here with me, and he is going to show you how to add content and manage that content in your new website.
Good morning. Well,
Good morning.
Thank you for coming. And I will probably end up repeating a little bit of what I talked about on Wednesday. So for anybody who was at the Wednesday training, hopefully it'll be reinforcement as opposed to boring repetition. Okay. So let me go back to sharing my desktop. And I'm joining you from sunny Oshkosh, Wisconsin, where the snow, which came down yesterday, is melting. All right, so back to sharing. Okay, so the difference between the training that I did on Wednesday and what I'll be showing you today is that today is specifically meant for those of you who will be logging into the site to create content. And creating content is a wide term because not only will you be creating it, but you will be, in fact, managing a lot of the content in the sense that Plone has a built-in workflow system that makes it so that when you create content, it's initially private, and when you want to make it public, you have to go through a publishing workflow, which means that most of you will probably be submitting your content for review. Someone else with review role will be taking a look at that content, making sure that it fits, that it meets all of the requirements for your content, and then we'll publish it, at which point it will be public. And so people who visit your website who don't have a login will be able to see that published content. But until whatever you create, whatever you write has been pushed through that publication workflow, the public will not see that content. So with that, let me explain that as you go through this training and as you start using your site, actually, I meant to ask, how many of you already feel comfortable with using your current Plone site out of the 9?
Raise your hand if you're feeling comfortable right now with your Plone site. We have 1 out of 9.
Really? And then how many of the 8 have never touched a Plone site before?
How many of the 8 have never touched Plone?
You talk about our old system or the new system?
You mean just like on the old system?
Yes, the old one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So okay, we got a mix now. Probably half and half. Some of them have touched the old system, and some of them haven't touched it at all. Right?
Okay.
Who hasn't touched it at all? Okay, we got 2 that haven't touched it at all.
All right, we got the newbies. Welcome. I mean, I hope that you're going to find that Plone, particularly for the newcomers, I hope that you're going to find Plone to be a useful, usable, powerful tool. Plone is something that I've been using for 16 years, and Plone is open source software. So I mean, I used it at the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh, where I installed it and set it up for about 350 websites on our campus alone, and it just blew me away. All of the functionality that it includes, its flexibility, its power. And so I've, as you can tell, I'm a passionate advocate for Plone. So I hope that you'll find Plone to be as welcoming and as useful as I have. But for those of you who have used the old site, I think what you'll find is that there's a lot of, I mean, most of the functionality that you will see today will be familiar because it's the same process for creating content, same process for editing, same process for moving content around, but it's going to look slicker. Hopefully it's going to be more visually appealing to you. And I know that going from your version of Plone to the current one, which is Plone 5.1, there's a lot more in the user interface that I think you'll find appealing. So Please bear with me, those of you who have used the old site. If you think that I'm just reviewing things that you already know, hopefully there'll be some new things in there that'll keep your attention. So first thing that I do want to say before I log in, which I actually, unfortunately, I have already logged in, is that it's important to distinguish between when you're logged into the site and when you're not logged into the site. So currently what you're seeing here on my screen is me being logged in. And then let me open up another browser window. So this is incognito mode. So it will look like I'm not logged in. So from here, the way that you log in is a little hidden. I'm not sure how it's done on your current site, but here there's this teeny little icon here with a person, and that's what you would click on to get to the login form. And the login form is what will allow you to enter your login name. In my case, I'm going to be, excuse me while I get this password here. Once I log in, I can see this toolbar on the left. So this toolbar is different from, it presents the same tools that you will remember from your current site, except moved over to the side. And this is something that Plone 5 has had for a while now. And the advantage of it is, of course, it makes it so that you're looking at your content the way a regular person would who isn't logged in. So your tools are still available to you, but a little bit off to the side. So that's a user interface improvement. You can also do things like, if you click on this Plone icon, you can shrink that toolbar so you have even more space available to you. The tools are all still there. And the bottom of the toolbar contains what's called the personal menu. And if you click on it, it'll have your login name or your name in there. If you click on it, you can see your preferences that you can set, a dashboard. In my case, because I'm logged in as an admin, I see the site setup, which is all the control panels for all the settings in Plone, and then log out. So let me just quickly show you the preferences pane. All of you, I think, will be using the same login system, the LDAP system that you've been entered into. So you will probably not need to make any changes in here, but I did just want to show you what you can set. It's probably not that useful in your case. Time zone, language, if Plone is a multilingual system, so especially for, well, I guess we have clients who are using this to present English and Spanish information on their website, but in particular in Europe and around the world, where Plone is used around the world, the multilingual aspect is very useful. Personal information, you may be able to enter some things here. If you wanted a little portrait of yourself so people can identify you and blame you for the content you've written, that would be there. The dashboard, however, is the thing that I think you are going to find to be the most useful. This, I believe, yes, it is a feature in Plone 3, the version that you're using currently, but it's something that I found that people don't necessarily know about, but for content editors, it's really useful. By the way, please stop me if you can't hear me, or if you have any questions, don't be afraid to interrupt. So currently my dashboard is empty, and it may not be empty for you depending on how admins have set up dashboards, but I want to show you how you can change your dashboard. If you look here, you can see an edit tab. So I'm going to click that. And I'm going to add a portlet here. And a portlet is really just a block of content. It can be static, so it can be just some text that someone has entered, or it can be dynamic. And here I'm going to add the recent items portlet. And that will show me the most recent 5 by default changes on the site. So this would be new content, changed content. I'm just going to go ahead and hit save. And then just to demonstrate, I'm going to add a calendar portlet. And that's really just, and I don't know, again, if you have been using calendar events in your site, but I think this is a feature of Plone that would be very handy when you're trying to announce things that are going to be happening in the city. So we can talk about this later, but a calendar portlet will just show these types of, in this case, I'm going to show any published calendar events in my portlet. And now I can also specify that in this case, I could say, I just want to show calendar events that are stored in the mayor's office folder. But I think I'm just going to leave it like that, the entire site. So let's say, oh, and then one more, the review list. Now this, for out of the 9 of you today, how many of you will be reviewing and publishing content?
Six.
Really? Okay, that's great. Okay, so this portlet will be particularly useful to you. The review list portlet shows, it shows the content items that have been submitted for review. And so those of you who are going to be reviewing content, I don't know what the timeline is for. Usually, my experience has been that sometimes people like to have things published really quickly because they're in a hurry to get it out there. So it's often useful to just get email notifications when you get items submitted for review. But here, this will show you at least, okay, there have been like 3 pages or 3 news items that have been submitted for review since the last time I looked, and I can go and click through on them and publish them.
Kim?
Yes.
We do have a question.
Yes, please.
Kim, my people that will be using this will probably only go into my department. So is this for this edit your dashboard, would that be used for all departments? Or would my people just go to my website, the parks website, and do their changes and updates and downloads just in that department? So I'm wondering if this is important to them, to learn this. Will this be part of the Parks Department process of adding or deleting or downloading?
That's a great question. Thank you. The short answer is yes. The review list, and I'll cover some of that later. But the review list portlet that I've just added here is global to the entire. It's global in the sense that it's for the entire site. But if I click on it, I can reconfigure it so that it's, yes, no, I can't reconfigure it. If I add another one, let me just add another one here. Review list. No, it doesn't, sorry. Which one was I looking at? Oh, sorry, it's recent items. What I can do, there's a number of ways that you can create these portlets so that you will only see items that have been submitted for review in your portion of the website. So in your department, for example, and this is all configurable. Later, well, I will be showing you, but I'll just tell you ahead of time that Plone's, one of Plone's powerful features is the ability for you to share different levels of access to different parts of your site, to different people or to different groups. And so I believe the best way, our recommendation is that each of your departments gets a matching group created into which you'll place your staff, and only that group will have the ability to edit content or publish content in your department. And so I'll show you how we can add a portlet into your department's portion of the site that will show only the members of that group the items that have been submitted for review. Does that sound good?
Yeah, because I know the way the website works now is if we want to put something on the front page of the website, we can't do that. That has to go through IT. So we would send that information to IT and say, did you put this on the front page of the city website? We wouldn't have access to that, and I don't know if we'll have access
It'll probably be the same way it is now.
We can only make changes within our department.
Right.
I believe that's right. The front page design does not directly allow you to edit things. If you scroll down a little bit, you can see that some of these items here, like these news items, these actually come from all over the website. So there are news items that have been published on your website, and regardless of the actual department that they're in. Same for these calendar events. These things come from, well, you can see park board meeting there. These calendar events come from different parts of the website. They're aggregated on the front page. And so in a sense, if you go to your Parks Department folder and you add a park event, or you add an event in your folder, in your department folder, and publish it, it will end up appearing automatically on the front page of the overall website.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question. So let me go back here. So let me then, I was editing portlets. Let me just show you what the dashboard looks like after we're done editing it. And when you log in, you will probably have a dashboard pre-configured. So, okay, okay, I'm not sure why that's happening. The recent changes portlet, this is what shows, in this case, we've configured it to be the 5 most recent changes on the site. So you can see here, the Parks News folder was recently modified, and I hope you can see this, it's red, and the red indicates that it's in the private state. In other words, the public can't see it. And in fact, depending on what your roles are when you log into the site, you may probably not see anything created by anybody else that is still in the private state. And that's meant to be a safe way for you to create content, a safe way for you to just continue editing it, revising it until you're ready to make it public, at which point you start pushing it through that workflow. Your first step is likely, well, 3 of you are going to be submitting your content for review, and someone in the group of 6 people who can review content will be receiving notifications about it, and then we'll be publishing it. So, and the 6 of you who will be reviewing content, you can just go ahead and probably directly publish content on your own. So the red is just a visual hint that tells you that this information is private. If you click through here in all recent changes, then you can see the full list of recent changes to the site. Is the font too small, or are you able to see that okay?
It's a little small. I don't know that we actually need to read it all, but it is a little small.
All right. I just bumped up the font size a little bit. Okay.
That's good. That's good.
Great. Okay. So that's the dashboard, and I hope that that you will be able to use the dashboard to identify information that's interesting to you, that's useful in your job function. It's a fast way of getting access to, it's a fast way of getting an overview of what's changed on the site, what you need to be doing. So with that, the next thing I wanted to cover is how to add content. And adding content, in the case of Plone, means that you're going to be having to think about 2 things. One is, what is the kind of information that I want to make available? In other words, what content type do I want to be thinking of adding? And where do I want to be adding it? So as I think, well, the majority of you know that Plone content, so on your website, the information is organized by folders. And so I'm going to click on the home. So here at the top, in the top portal, I guess the navigation bar, you can click on home to get to the home page. You can also click on the logo. So I'm back at the home, and I'm going to click on the contents button here, and that will show you a view of what is in the current folder. So a Plone site starts off being a top-level folder in which you can place other folders. You can add other folders. And so here by the icon, I can tell there's the mayor's office folder, users folder, news, and then departments. And folders can contain other folders as well as regular non-folder types. So here we have a page. Hopefully you can see there's a little bit of a I guess when a hover message that indicates that this that I've got my mouse on is a document. That's a page. This one is a folder, and so on. And we've got a couple of images here. So what you want to do when you're about to add content is to think, okay, where do I need to add it? And depending on your role and how your site administrator has set up permissions, you will not be able to necessarily be able to add content anywhere you want. So presumably you're going to be working within your department folder. And so you can go to departments. Well, you can do it in a number of ways. You can click, you can mouse over in the navigation bar for your department. So let me see, where's the Parks Department? Here we go. So you're going to want to navigate to the portion of the site where you want to add that content. And then you're going to be able to use this Add New button in the toolbar. And if you click on it, you will get a choice. Usually you'll get a choice. It'll be dependent on the restrictions that have been set by your site administrators for the different folders in your site. So as you can imagine, in the news folder, you're probably not going to want to add anything except news items, possibly some images, possibly some documents, but ideally you're going to find, you're going to have restrictions on folders that will help keep the content overall better organized so that people know where to go in the site to find something. So these restrictions here may or may not, they're going to change depending on the folder. So here, if I want to add a regular page, these content types are fairly intuitive, I guess, by name. And again, since most of you have used Plone before, this should be very familiar to you. So you have different kinds of content types that you can add. Pages, news items are kind of like pages. I'll go into them in a little bit more detail. They show a little bit more, for example, a news item will have usually an image that needs to show up. So people will find news items a little bit more visually appealing than a regular page. A link really is just a link to another website usually. So for example, you might have, I think you have payment systems that for sewage, for example, you could create a link to your payment system for parking fines or for sewage, for example. Images, that's to upload a photo. You can add more folders within a folder. A file would be things like a PDF or a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet. An event is a calendar event that gets shown in a calendar widget, and it will show up once it's published on the front page of your site. And I'll talk about collections in a little bit more detail. How many of you have used collections?
I see no hands.
Ooh, okay. Well, Nick, you'll remember from Wednesday that collection, I hope you'll remember, collections are a very powerful tool. I want to show them to you today, and I will briefly, so that I want to encourage your use of collections where appropriate, of course, but they're very powerful tools that come with Plone. So you have a number of different content types that you're going to be able to add to your site or to your folder. And so let me go ahead and add a page here. And don't worry, anything I create here will remain private, and then we can delete it. Joanna, I think, is the final content migration happening later on?
We need to schedule the final content migration still, so I wanted to give everyone a chance to get this training. And then what we'll do is we'll put a moratorium on adding content while we do the migration and direct everyone to add it into the staging environment.
Okay. So in other words, it's safe for me to add things, and then I'll delete them or they'll get overwritten. Okay. So when you add any sort of content to a Plone site, there are metadata fields that Plone will allow you to enter values into. And the metadata are used in a number of different ways. The title of a piece of content is searchable, and it's obviously useful to your website visitors to understand what it is that they're looking at. The summary is also searchable through the search engine, and I'll show you the search engine. I'll highlight it a little bit. When you type in a helpful summary of maybe 1 or 2 sentences, it can really explain quickly at a glance what exactly this page might be about. So for a park department, you might say, well, in Oshkosh we have a zoo here that will be opening up soon. So a title of a page might be something about the zoo, and then the summary would explain a little bit more what in particular this page would be about. And then of course you've got your rich text area, this same editor that you've been using called TinyMCE, which lets you do all sorts of formatting, all sorts of headings, different kinds of replacement. You can do find and replace, you can cut, copy, and paste sections of text and HTML. You don't have to know HTML, but you can view it. For example, sorry, it's in here, source code. So for any of you who are HTML wizards, you can play with the HTML directly. Otherwise, you can, oops. So let me just go into. So in particular, the title and the summary are considered metadata. The body of any page or any calendar event, any news item will also be searched by the search engine. It'll be indexed. And in this case, we have also a field called lead image. And this is an image that will show up in page listings or on the front page of your site whenever someone looks at, say, the contents of a folder. They'll be shown this lead image next to the title and maybe the summary. It's just a way of making your content a little bit more eye-catching, and it can convey some more information about the page contents. And you can always enter a lead image caption. There are other metadata that Plone will use. I hope that you will find these tags useful. So for example, if you want to add a tag, so a tag is really a way of categorizing the information that appears on this page or this content item. And tags are site-wide, so that if, for example, I'll go ahead and add the parks tag here. And you can see now when I hit enter, you've got a widget here that you can remove. So if I decide, no, that was a mistake, I don't want it there, you can click on the X. But I'll just go ahead and re-add it. And then I'll add that it's about the zoo. So that is information that will also be indexed by the search engine. This is all part of the metadata. I don't think you're going to be using the language feature, but the related items field is a way for you to explicitly connect this piece of content to other content on your site. So we don't, let me see if we have. So, and when I click on that widget, I can then navigate to items in the site. I can navigate above, below. I can navigate to anywhere on the site. And what will happen here, you'll see in a moment, when I hit save, that whatever I've entered in the related items field will show up as links at the bottom of this page when it's saved. Let me go ahead and do that. I'll hit back in. Let's save. All right. So you can see the title got displayed here. The summary goes here. And then here's the body. And I mentioned the related items field, and you can see the related items show up down here. The tags that I entered show up here, filed under. Now the interesting thing, well, I always thought it was kind of cool. I can click on any of these tags, and it will take me to a listing of all the content on the site that has this tag. So right now, there shouldn't be anything else that has it. But it comes up looking like a search engine result, which it is. And you can see here, here's the only thing on the site that has that tag. And it even tells you where it is in which folder it happens to be in. It shows you information about when the content was last modified, by whom, and the summary. So you can see that the title is useful, obviously, but so is the summary, because the summary shows up right here too. The red here indicates that the page is private. So again, that hint. So let me go back. Actually, I'll just click through on it again. And I'll hit edit. So I want to show you.
Kim, could you go ahead and clear your reminder down there? It just looks like something we might be trying to pay attention to. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I don't know why that was showing up there. All right. The additional kinds of metadata. So that was the categorization tab. And then there's a dates tab. And dates are important when Plone is looking at when Plone decides which content to show to someone who's looking at someone who's either logged into the site or someone who's not logged into the site. Different users have different roles and therefore can see different things in a Plone site. And so all Plone content is security aware. So every time somebody requests a particular thing to view, Plone will decide in the background, who is this person logged in as, what is that person's roles, and do those roles mean this part of the page is visible or this part of the page is editable. And so all of this information is calculated in the background before Plone serves it back to the web browser of the person. And so publication date and expiration date are also information, metadata, that Plone uses to decide whether or not to show a thing or not. So publication date here, there is no publication date because, as you can see over here in the toolbar, this page is still private, so it hasn't been published. But if I do publish it, this publication date will get automatically filled in. I can also set the publication date. If I set this to be, if I click on it, then it's set to today, right now. I can click on the date and say, I think I'd like it to be published on Friday next week at, let me scroll down. Let's say for argument's sake, I want it to be published at 5 a.m. And so at that point, this page will not appear on the site until that date and time is reached. So you can do future publishing. If you decide you don't want to have that date in there anymore, you can just click on this little trash can icon. It'll clear out that date. Same with the expiration date. If you want to make a piece of content disappear from your site effectively on a certain date, you can. So you can set this to be in 6 months. If when, for example, the zoo is closing, you don't want to clutter up your site for website for visitors, so it's easier for them to see what's relevant if you generally expire content that's no longer useful to them, that's no longer relevant. So you can set future expiry dates as well. Any questions about dates or metadata so far?
I'm good for now.
Okay. The ownership tab probably isn't going to be useful to you, except if you're trying to decide whom to contact about a particular page that you have questions for. The creators field will show whoever was the person who initially created the page. The contributors field is something that you can manually change, but Plone won't change it automatically for you. And the rights is probably not useful to you, but it could be something about you're free to reuse this content or not. The settings tab is probably, well, the one thing that I can see it could be useful for is that table of contents. If I check this table of contents, what will happen is when I save the page, you will see a small block of text off to the side that shows all the different headings that you've entered in your text. So let me go back to the default fields, and I'll say my heading, and I'm going to say header 1. So I click there, pick formats, it's a heading 2. Now let me hit save. And you can see over here your table of contents that's automatically updated based on the information that you've entered in your rich text field. This is very powerful because especially if you've got content that scrolls down, that's long enough that visitors would have to scroll down the page, having the table of contents here can really give them a hint that there's a lot more here on this page, so you're probably going to be interested in it. And if they clicked on these items, they would be taken to the actual heading or subheading. So that was the settings tab. There are a couple of other things here that you might find useful, and this is probably more a policy decision about your website. You can allow commenting on individual items in your site or in folders, and commenting means that the site, or there will be a field, I won't get into it in too much detail, but it allows visitors to add comments to a particular thing, and you can turn on comment moderation, you can turn on email notification of new comments. So you can manage how people can respond to a particular thing. So if you wanted to have a particular document open for public comment, this could be a way to do that. I don't encourage you to use exclude from navigation. I have seen on one occasion an abuse of the exclude from navigation setting. If you check that box, then it means that whatever content you've got here will not appear in the navigation bars. So you can see on the left-hand side here, this is a navigation portlet, and it's something that gives visitors and content editors a hint of what else is in this folder. If you check this box, this item that you've checked the box for will not appear in this listing. And it can be useful sometimes, but in rare cases only. If you look here, this other field called short name, as the explanation says, this is what appears in the web address for this page or for this piece of content. And this short name is initially set when you entered a title. So when you enter a title here, whatever this title is will get lowercased, and special characters and spaces will get replaced with dashes. So that's set originally from that initial title. But if you were to change the title significantly to something else, this short name will not change And so if you find that the new title and the short name don't really match, it can be confusing to end users or to visitors. You might want to just change this name here. But again, keep in mind the formatting, which is usually lowercase with hyphens and no special characters. If you look at this versioning enabled checkbox, this is a feature of Plone that automatically tracks versions of a piece of content. So you should be able to, let me make another change here. Oop, wrong one. I'm gonna see this undo. I'm gonna undo that. And this is what I want to do. So I'll change, I'll save it. All right, so then we're looking at versions. So in the toolbar again, if you look at this, where it says in a few seconds, that's interesting. This is actually the versioning. This should show, let me reload the page. There we go. So once I reloaded the page, it said, oh, this page was last modified a few seconds ago. And if I click on it, then I will be shown the different versions of this page since it was created. So you can see down at the bottom is when I created the page, then I edited it, another edit. And so these are relative dates and times. So it'll eventually start saying yesterday, last week, last month, so on. You can view a particular version. So if I click on that, you can see what the content looked like. It just said, hello, this is a test page. And I can revert to a version if I want. I can compare to the current version. I'll click on that. And this is sort of a protection from potential website attacks. So you can just go ahead and click through to it. So you can see here highlighting in color of the changes to the site, the changes to the content item from one version to the next or between versions. You can see I inserted a heading type 3 and some more regular text, a paragraph tag. So that's the revisions. Very powerful tool. It can also let you see at a glance who made the change.
Hey, Tim.
Yes.
Using the revert to this revision, do you lose the changes that you made?
Yes, well, you do and you don't. Let me go ahead and revert to this version. So now you can see we're back to just, hello, this is a test page. And this message here that the page has been reverted to a particular revision. Now, if I click back on this versions button, the version I created is still there. So you don't lose anything.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Let me continue with editing here. So that was the versioning. And you can see that the table of contents was unchecked because this is the old version before I enabled it. But let me go to the lead image. And I want to show you how lead images can make the site more visually appealing. I think I have an image of lockpicks. And I don't, it's a long story. So what I do is I just select an image that will serve as the lead image for this piece of content, and I'll hit save. And it will upload the image to the Plone site and should display it. All right, so this, obviously this is too big a lead image. So that's something that I am going to talk about a little bit later, but essentially you want to be aware of the different places that images will get shown when you include them in your content. And there are image sizes that will work better or less well, depending on how those images are going to be used. So in this case, you can see that a lead image should probably be smaller than this, maybe 200 pixels by 100 pixels, something like that. But it appears automatically on the page. This is really most useful for news items or blog posts, calendar events, things like that. But that is a field that is just there for you to be able to add a little bit more visual appeal and make your website a little bit more useful to your visitors, especially if you want something to stand out. Everyone's so used to seeing things on Facebook. There's images everywhere, and you know images in Facebook are huge. So this is a way for you to compete for the attention of your website visitors. So I think that's what I wanted to cover for metadata and page content types. And you've seen that, by the way, if you can remove an image, you can replace it here. So I'll just, the last thing I wanted to point out is what the change note field lets you do. As you are probably going to be collaborating on editing content, it's useful for other content editors to see a quick message about what you changed when you made a change. So here I'm going to remove lead image, and then I'll hit save. So nothing appears here other than changes saved. And if I hit reload or click the view button again, that should hide that message. So here we go. This is what the page looks like. But if I look at the revisions again, you can see my message here, my quick change note. So I encourage you to use these if you know that other people are likely to be helping you edit content, a particular piece of content. I encourage you to just share with each other a little message like typo corrected, something like that. Very useful for helping other editors. All right. So that really is the basic properties, the metadata of content items. And I did talk about some of the where to add content. So you do have to think about where it is that you want to add it, because Plone content is organized by folders, the navigation is also taken from the folder structure. There's a little trick. I think it might not be on your site. I'm not seeing it right now. There is no sitemap, but here's a little trick. Most Plone sites by default have a sitemap. And so if you were to look at the sitemap, you would see the navigational structure of the entire site. And all of this is done, this is generated, the sitemap is generated, and so is the navigation from the folder structure that you've got. So if this might actually be a very easy way for those of you who have editing permissions across the site to be able to just quickly jump to it. The other way that you can find content easily is to use the Contents button in the toolbar. And with that, you can find folders and you can drill down into a folder. So I'm going to go into the Mayor's Office folder, and I see the Mayor's Office folder has Citizen Services. So this Contents toolbar button is a very quick way for you to jump to the right part of the site where you want to start adding content. Once you're looking at that folder, then you can use the Add New button, and whatever you choose here in the Add New menu will get added to this folder that you are looking at. So it's very placeful. Any questions about navigating to the place where you want to add content? It's a little different from WordPress, and I think there's some other, Drupal and WordPress. I think in particular WordPress, you just go ahead and add a page or add a thing, and then later you have to move it into the right place. You kind of have to say, I want that thing that I just added needs to go over here in the navigation. Plone's actually, to me, is more intuitive. It's kind of like the folder structure of my computer. So I know if I want to add something to my downloads, if I want to add to my documents folder, I first go to the documents folder and I start adding a thing there. Plone works that way. So for me, it works well. It sort of maps to the usual way I think about adding content and organizing content. Okay, so let me go back to my dashboard, and I should be able to see, yes, here's my page that I was editing. So again, there's many different ways you can navigate to things. Hopefully it's not confusing to you. I like to think that it just gives you more options. How's that for a sales pitch?
Yeah, that works.
So I wanted to talk about workflow. And as I've mentioned before, when you create content, it starts off in the private state. And then if you want to have it published, in other words, you want it to be visible to the public, you have to push it through a workflow. This button here shows in red, a little red icon. And one thing I should point out is that these color hints are not the only way that you can tell something. They're not the only way that Plone conveys that information to you. The Plone community, Plone is open source software. It's been developed for about 20 years now. And the Plone community has always made accessibility compliance its top priority. In addition to obviously good functionality for creating websites and managing websites, accessibility has been such an important part of Plone's DNA that it's always been fully compliant with all accessibility standards from the time Section 508 came out many years ago to WCAG, WCAG, and all the different versions of WCAG. So Plone, for a long time, was the only content management system that was fully compliant for accessibility concerns. So color is one of the issues that sight-impaired people or blind people can't use. But if you mouse over any of these things, if you look at the underlying HTML, screen readers will be given the hint, this is a private piece of content. So I just wanted to mention that color is not, you don't have to rely on color. And I know there's actually a significant portion of the population that's colorblind. So again, I apologize if I've been mentioning color too much, but your screen readers and other textual hints exist in here that are not visible to people who are sighted, but are there for other people. So if I click on this button, I'm shown explicitly that this piece of content is in the private state. And then I'm given options about what I can do to change that state. Because I'm logged in as an admin, I have the ability to directly publish both internally and externally. Now the difference between publishing internally, I hope it's, well, publishing internally means that the thing that I'm looking at will go from being invisible to most logged in users to being visible to all logged in users. In other words, if my colleagues, right now, unless my colleagues have admin permissions or admin roles, or have our department heads, for example, who can see everything in their department folder, my other colleagues will not be able to see this piece of content until I publish internally. Once I publish internally, let me go ahead and click that. Now you can see, again, the color hint, but it says that this thing is now internally published. So let me go back to another window here. I'm going to log out. Oop, sorry. I'm already logged in, so actually that's an interesting issue. We need to have a logout button. Oh, I know where it was. Sorry, I'll go back to that. So now I'm logged out of this site. If I flip back to this page, I'm going to copy the web address for this. And remember, it's in the internally published state. In other words, it should be visible to logged in users, but to the public, it will not be visible. If I paste that and then I try to view that content item, I'm immediately taken to the login page. It's saying, you can't see this. You're not authorized to see this. But as a convenience, it's presenting me with a login form so that I can log in. I'm going to go back here and pretend you didn't see this. I'm going to create a test user. This is the control panels that I think most of you probably will not have access to. This is configuration that is potentially, it's very powerful, and so making changes to these control panels can affect the entire site. So I'm going to create a test user. And normally, you wouldn't be able to directly set a password. It's easiest because your site hasn't yet been set up with an outbound email server. The only way to create a new user is to set an initial password. But once your site has been set up with an external email server, you would be better off just not setting the password, but when you create the account, it will send an email to the person. The person will click on a link to be taken to a page where they can set their own password. That's usually the most secure way of creating an account. Most of you probably will be using an account that has already been set up by through your LDAP system, your directory system. So you will probably have the same password that you use for every other system that's connected to that directory. But I'm going to go ahead and create this. Oh, of course, yeah, of course. This is a throwaway password, a throwaway account. So now I have this test account, and over here I'm going to log in. And now I can see this. Now I can see this page because I'm a logged in user. All right. But you saw also that the public who isn't logged in cannot see this content. Any questions about the workflow and the states?
Looks like we're good.
All right. I'm going to then show you what happens at the next state. So back to this same page. If I click on state, I can publish externally. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now I see the color hint has changed. The state says it's externally visible. Let me go back to the other browser. I'm going to log out of this. This is where you find the logout. Sorry, it's down here in your personal menu. So you can see my personal menu here has got my name, my username, and because this account is not an admin, this account also does not have access to the site setup control panels. I do have my own dashboard, and here's my logout link. So now that I'm logged out, I'm going to go back to the same page, and now I can see it because this page is now in the externally published state. All right, so that's hopefully a refresher for those of you who have been using Plone, but the idea that the publication workflow gives you a lot of control over who can see a piece of content from the time you create it to the time you start publishing it, whether internally or then ultimately externally. Things that are externally published, you can imagine that really is just that the public can see it. Back in this browser window, I'm going to retract this page. So this will just send it, it'll return the state back to the private state. So you can see I'm in the private state again. Let me go back to the other window. I'm going to reload this page. And as expected, because the page is in the private state, I can't see this anymore. I'm prompted to log in. The reason why I'm going back to the private state is I want to show you what the workflow looks like for most of you who, well, for those of you who will not have the ability, will not have the role for publishing. You would not see this publish externally nor publish internally. You will see submit for publication. And once you do that, the state of this page goes to pending review. So if I am, again here, I will not see, if I'm the public, I will not see this page. It's still, let me paste it back in. The public still will not see anything that's in pending review. But let's say, we'll get to it in a moment. Let's say I do have the ability to publish, I have the ability to review content and to publish it. Then I would be able to see it. I'll log in this window as well as admin. And then I will see that, oh, yes, indeed, this is in the pending review state. And then I, as an admin, can go ahead and publish it internally or publish it externally. So this is how we share the responsibilities for creating content and then for reviewing it and publishing it. So back to this window. What I can also do is I can use the advanced button, the advanced choice. And the advanced choice really gives me the opportunity to state a little bit more clearly what I want to have happen. So this is just showing which content I'm going to be publishing or which content I want to have somebody review. I can specify immediately here the publication date and the expiration date, which we saw before. And I can put in a comment that says something about this transition from non-published to published. So I can say, I'm now publishing it so that it will expire in 3 months. And then down here, as an admin, I have the ability to make these changes right here. So I can put in a little bit more information in this comments field that will be helpful to a reviewer who can say, okay, this looks fine, because I understand better now what the content creator wanted to have happen with this content. And then I would press save. So that is my overview of workflow. Any questions so far?
Nope, we're good.
All right. So we've been talking for about an hour. Does anybody want a break for a few minutes, or should I continue?
They're taking breaks as they need it. You can continue.
Okay.
Do you need a break?
No, I'm fine. I'm fine, thanks.
Okay.
Okay. Let me retract this again. The tiny MCE editor is, I think it probably hasn't changed very much. Visually, it's a little different from the version that you have. I encourage you to explore these menus yourself, but you can insert specific media. So you can say, this is, for example, YouTube videos. You can take embed codes from YouTube videos and paste it right in here. This is very handy if you want to if you have a video of the zoo, for example. Well, sorry, does Terre Haute have a zoo?
No, it does not. It used to long ago, but not now.
Oh, that's a shame. Okay, bad example. Well, you can use these media dialogues to insert embedded videos for all sorts of things. press releases, news conferences, and so on. Then you have all the control over formatting that I think you would likely need. This format submenu is the same as the one that's made a little bit more directly accessible here. So it's changing the headers, indicating whether something is a quoted block of text. You can change the formatting of the individual words or anything that you select. So if I were to say, I would say this is going to be bold. You can also, there are shortcuts. These toolbar icons are shortcuts for anything that's in these menus. So the most commonly used features that appear in the menu are in the toolbar. You can also add tables. I would encourage you to be sparse in your use of tables. There are websites where, especially Plone 5 is very nice to look at on a phone or a tablet. And one of the reasons why it looks good on a tablet or a phone is that it's got what's called a responsive design, so that when the screen width is smaller, the Plone software, the theme, knows to just increase the font size and move things sort of in vertical blocks. And if you start using too many tables, you can prevent that from happening correctly, and you'll end up with something on a phone that just looks much too wide to fit on the phone screen. So just be careful when you're using tables. You can change the alignment. Again, all of these things are in the toolbar here. Italics, left align, center align, right align, bullet points. You have different types of bullet points you can enter. Numbered points, indentation, outdentation. So then the last things I wanted to show you are a little bit more fun. Try a Google search. So here I'm going to highlight this text and add a link. The insert link dialog is a little bit more powerful in Plone 5. As you can see here, I'm presented with a number of links, types of links that I can insert. Internal meaning content on the site. So I can navigate to something and I can say, that link that I want to insert really is to this folder. Now, if I click on this part of the folder, it'll drill down into that folder. If I want to select just this folder, if I click here, you can see it says open folder. That would allow me to drill down into it. But if I click on this part, then I'm picking that item. So let's say I wanted that link to point to the January folder. I would click that. So you can see this is the internal piece of content that's been selected to be the target for that link. But in this case, I don't really want to send users to internal content because I want to send them to a Google search. So I'm going to just click the X to get rid of that. I'm going to use the external tab, and here I can enter an external URL. I can also specify that this link should open in the same browser or in the same browser window or in a new one or a tab, depending on how individuals have their browsers set up to open in windows or tabs. And then I can give the link a title. This probably isn't necessary because the text I highlighted will serve as the title. Now that is a nice way to insert a link to, say, Google. So I'll go ahead and click insert. And you can see this has been turned into a link. So then let me add another one. And so I'm going to add in a mail link. So I select the text, I highlight it, I insert a link. In this case, I want it to be an email. So I'll enter the email address that this links to. And then I'll hit insert. So that's a mail link. And then I can create a link to something that I can upload directly into here. This is probably most useful if I want to upload a PDF and make a link to that PDF. So here, this is actually a very powerful dialog box, as you can see, because I can drag and drop files right into place here, or I can point, or I can choose something, like if I click browse, do I have a PDF here? Where is this one? Retirement savings. Okay, I won't do that because it's kind of depressing. So you can upload a PDF and link to it directly here, or in some cases, if you wanted to link to an image that someone could download, like a map of a portion of the city, that's something that you can use here. You can just drag it into here, or you can click through to select it. And you can also specify where in the site that document or that file or that image should be uploaded to. And then anchor. The anchor link is a way for you to specify where else on this page you want people to be able to link, to click on, to be taken to. So this is useful if you got a tall page, a long page with multiple headings and subheadings. You can actually specify that this link should click through to the conclusion, for example, which would be at the bottom of the page. So these are automatically generated anchor lists based on the headings and the subheadings that you've added to your to the current piece of content. So I'm going to hit cancel here, and then I'll delete that. And let me save it, and you can see what it looks like. So, oh, what happened here? Just save you. Oh, here we go. Ah, yes, we have a little bit of a theme issue here. That's right. I forgot about that. Sorry, we're aware of this particular thing that links show up as white on white. So this won't happen shortly. We'll be correcting that shortly. But
It's been corrected in Sandbox and just not pushed to staging yet.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate you're not changing things underneath me. That's fine. Okay, so you can see my try a Google search link, and if I click on it, it opens up in a new tab, which is what I set when I was creating the link, as you'll recall. And if I click or you can email Kim Nguyen, if I click that, it's popping up in my mail. There we go. So you can see it comes up with a compose window, and the subject is what I entered when I created the link. Any questions about files, links? The next thing I wanted to talk about is, please go ahead and interrupt. The image insertion is something that is very nice to play with. If you click on that toolbar icon for images, you get a similar dialog where you can link to, you can say, on this page, I want to show an image that's from somewhere else in the site. So I think I'm going to click on this beacon image. You will want to have a title for images and some what's called alternative text. Think of the alternative text as a summary of what's in the photo. This is part of accessibility compliance that the software, the Plone software, can't help you with except to prompt you to enter values, some text here. Because if you were a sight-impaired person or you were using a screen reader, you would be informed that there's an image on right here, but you wouldn't know what that image is of except by what a person had entered as the title or the alternative text. So it's important for your sight-impaired users or visitors or colleagues really, to enter something here that's meaningful. The alignment field lets you indicate whether or not the image you're inserting should appear right here in the text, or should be off to the right or on the left side of the text. So I'll choose right. And then the size choice here lets you specify some built-in sizes that Plone will generate. When you upload an image, Plone generates certain image sizes, standard image sizes for you automatically, so that they don't take time for you to regenerate yourself or manually have to recrop. So they're available for you to just pick from. So generally, if you're in the middle of a page and you want to insert a picture of something, you don't want to choose original size unless you know that the image has been created or cropped or sized to fit. You can choose one of these existing ones, and preview is a good size. So I'll hit insert now. And this is just a small image, so it wasn't critical to limit the size of this. But if you were to select it again, you click on the image, and then you can continue editing that image. I can change it, I can choose original, so on. So you can have fine control over how images appear in the body of pages or events or news items. And it's important to choose image sizes, as I was saying before, for lead images, choose image sizes that fit, that work. Just a quick comment about new cameras these days can generate images that are huge and take a long time really to download. So it's important for your users, your website visitors, that you put appropriately sized images on your site. Occasionally we'll run into clients who have like a 10 megabyte photo that has to be downloaded every time somebody looks at the front page of their site, and that slows down the site significantly. So keep that in mind when you're uploading images or you're choosing images to display. And that would be a case where it's important that you use this image sizing choice, because if you allow original to appear, you're going to slow down users. You can also upload images directly here. You can just drag and drop them from a Windows Explorer window or from your desktop, or you can drag them in here, or you can select them. And you can also say which folder you want those images to go into. And I'll have a little bit more to say about how you organize those images. You can also just link to an external image. So if you have the URL, a web address for an image that you want to use that is on another site, you can just paste the web address of that image right in here. Maybe not ideal, because you never know if the owners of the other site will remove that image. If they do, then this will not work. It'll look like you've got a broken link, which it will be a broken link to that image. Any questions about images, inserting images or sizing?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Okay, so let me cancel out of that. So as I was saying before, there's a lot of different content types in Plone that you can add. So if I go back to the folder, the Parks Department folder, I can add more folders. So if I want to organize my content further, it's easy to do that by adding folder and giving that folder a useful name, and then from that folder, then into that folder, then adding whatever content I want to place in it. So again, placeful, you have to be looking at the thing that you want to insert content into. Let me show you files. A file is a PDF. It can be a Word document, a an Excel spreadsheet. Anything that's not an image is really what it comes down to. Anything that's not an image, including videos. So video files are a little different, but they're still considered files in Plone terminology. So here you don't have a drag and drop thing. Actually, in a way you do. It's a trick that I found. You can, for example, if I have this window here open, I can drag that right onto this little choose file button. That's a nice little trick. And if you don't enter a title, the file will get its name from the actual file name. Sorry, I just said that don't use add file for images, but I did. So you can enter a description too, and you've got the same metadata that you had for pages. This is universal to Plone. Any Plone content item has these. So once you add that, let me see if I can find a better. Oh, here's one. This was a big one though. I don't know how many megabytes this is. 12 megs, it might not work. So this is the Plone Administrator's Guide. I'll hit save. And if you can see this, but at the bottom bar down here, it's uploading very slowly. So maybe that was definitely not too big a file to upload. Generally speaking, you want to be, again, like with images, you want to be careful about how big a file is that you upload, because if your users don't know to expect that it's such a large file, they may attempt to view it on a slow network connection if they've got a phone. It's important nowadays in particular to be aware that a significant portion of website traffic comes from mobile devices. I think at least 50% would be mobile device access. And again, it's generational, so younger people will be probably accessing your website on a mobile device, in a large majority of them, as opposed to older folks like me who have computers and use desktop devices. So you can see this is uploading really slowly, so I'll go ahead and open up another tab and do something else in the meantime. This is the same folder we were in. Okay, so that was adding a file. Adding an image, this one is similar to adding file. It's just a little bit more information to convey to Plone that this is an image, and so it'll show thumbnails. So I'm going to add an image here too. It looks the same as the add file dialog. I'll add this, another lockpick image. So the one difference when you upload an image is Plone will display that image for you in a nice large box like this, as opposed to a file, which you'll see shortly once the other tab finishes loading. The file view that Plone gives you will not show a preview of the contents of that file. By the way, and I was talking to Joanna about this earlier today, that there are add-ons to Plone that will do very nice things for you for displaying or previewing PDFs and Office documents. In fact, that is originally why, let me see if I can, this one here. The FBI uses Plone, and this is actually the company I used to work for before is responsible for creating and maintaining the FBI site. And this is a PDF that has been uploaded to the FBI site. And it's a file type, but this add-on is called Document Viewer. It shows you a preview of that PDF or that Word document or that Excel spreadsheet. And this document is a one-page document, so there are no thumbnails really to show you. But if it had multiple pages, you would see a list of thumbnails over here, and then you could click through on them so you could jump to a particular page. You can zoom in and out. For documents that contain text out of the box, sorry, that PDFs generally do, there would be a text extraction that you could see just the text that's in the PDF. And if you upload a scanned image, this add-on will actually perform optical character recognition and extract the text for you. So this is an add-on that we should probably talk about getting onto your site at some point. So if I look back in this tab, I can see that the PDF that I uploaded has finally finished loading, and it's 11 megabytes. And so here, as opposed to the file, as opposed to the image type, you don't get a preview of it until, for example, we can get that add-on onto your site. Let me go back to contents. This is a quick way of, see, from where I am looking at this image, I don't have an add new button in my toolbar, because the idea is that whatever I add will be added inside the current object. In this, an image, you can't add something into it. So you have to go back to the contents of the folder. And from here, I can add new. All right. So let me quickly look at news items. News items, the typical title, summary, text, and a lead image. And why do you ask? Is there a separate news item type compared to a page? And the reason why is the content type, the type of a piece of content is useful to Plone. So if I go to the home page again, anything that I've published that is a news item will show up in this list. The most recent 5 in this case will show up in this list. That is a way for Plone to distinguish between a regular page that's been published and a news item that's been published, because you want news items to show up in this list. So that content type information is metadata that Plone uses to decide what to do, what else to do with that content. So that's why it's important for you to think about, is this a news item? Is this a regular page? It's a little bit more to keep in your head, but I think you'll get, well, most of you are already used to it, but this is an explanation really of why content type matters. Let me hit the back button here, I'll cancel. And so now I'm back to the add new. And then calendar event is a little different. You get your title, your summary. You get event start and date, start and end times, dates and end times. And you can indicate that an event is for the entire day, or that it's an ongoing event. You can add recurrence fields. There's a recurrence field, so I can add a recurrence. So if, for example, this training were from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock today, that's good. But if I know it's going to happen weekly, then I click that box and I'll say repeat weekly. And I'll say it's only going to last 2 weeks. And so here I get a preview of the 2 occurrences. And I can add arbitrarily other dates and times. When I hit save, you can see here those 2 dates have gotten added here. The location is really just text. So you can say it's going to be Zoom meeting. Attendees is also text. It's one person per line. If you want to make, if you want to publish information about whom to contact, you can enter contact information here. If more details about the event are available elsewhere, so if you're using an event management system, you can put in a link to that event in the event management system. And then here's your usual rich text that you can, your formatted text, and your lead image. So that's, I'll go ahead and hit save. And I do encourage you, I remind you to use lead images where possible. Oh. There you go. You can see venue detail. That information that I just entered appears here, and a clickable email link, and more information. The body appears here. Now, because this is private, it will not be on the front page. Let me go ahead and publish it. Go back to the front page, hit reload. Plone training now appears here. Is that slick? I love it. All right. So, again, please interrupt me if you have any questions about this. The way that you can move content in a Plone site is that there's a clipboard concept, and you want to be able to, you can access the clipboard through the Actions button here in the toolbar. If I click Actions, I can cut the current thing that I'm looking at, which means it'll get removed from here, put in the clipboard. I would navigate to the destination folder, and then use the Actions button there, and use the paste button, the paste choice, which isn't here yet because I don't have anything in the clipboard. If you want to duplicate content, you use copy, and then you go to the new place and you use paste. If you want to delete the current item, you use the delete button. If you want to rename it, you can use this rename choice. Rename, I'll go ahead and show you rename first. Rename lets you change not just the title, but recall the short name, the thing that appears in the URL bar. So if you look up here in the URL bar, you can see Plone-training is what appears, and that's what is this thing. So if you were to change the title significantly, you can change the short name to match. So again, this is another place that you can make those changes. Hit cancel. Now back to Actions delete. Now, one thing I want to caution you about is that deletion is, for most intents and purposes, is permanent deletion. We should, again, this is another add-on that we should explore installing on your site at some point in the future when you're more comfortable with your site and everything's running smoothly. There is a sort of a trash can add-on where deletion will just make it look like the thing is gone, but you'll still be able to recover the deleted items from a trash can. But in this case right now, if you delete this, you'll get prompted with a, "Are you sure?" And if you go ahead and hit delete, it will be permanently deleted. It is possible, if you make a mistake, that you can contact one of your site administrators, and your site administrators will have access to a tool that can, in a lot of cases, recover those deleted items for you. But please don't wait a long time to tell them that. When I worked at the university, I remember I got a call from somebody something like 6 weeks after they deleted a whole folder full of important content for their department. And I was going like, I don't know, I'll try. And so I had access to the undo feature, which is only for administrators. And fortunately for that person, I was able to undo that deletion. But in a site where there's a lot of changes happening to content, a lot of different content editors, it won't last that long. So please, if you make a mistake and you delete something in error, please contact your site administrators as soon as you can. So that's action. So I'm going to cut this event and I'm going to put it in another folder. So you can see it says Plone training cut. I'm going to go to a different folder. I'll go to the city clerks folder. And here I'm going to say actions, paste. and you can see a message that says items pasted. So if I use the contents button, probably paste it at the bottom here. You can see Plone Training's been added at the bottom of the folder. All right. That's the way to use the Actions button. If you want to move a lot of content around, you can also use the Contents button, which is what we're looking at. So the Contents button, or the Contents view, lets you choose one or more things that you can move around or perform operations on. So I'm gonna just page back here. So this is the city clerk folder, and let's say for argument's sake I wanted to move a number of things. I would check a box next to each one, and then if you look in the top portion of this page, you can see there's an icon for cutting, one for copy, for paste, and just deletion. Again, you'll get prompted here. This is a nice feature of Plone where it warns you that some of the things that you're about to delete are being referred to by other pages on the site. And so if you were to go ahead and delete them, those pages would have broken links on them. So this is a way to just warn you ahead of time. Well, you might want to check what's going on with those other pages. And if you see here, there's an edit in new window link, you can actually just click on that and be taken to the edit form for that thing that refers to one of the items I was about to delete. And so you can find the link to it. It's probably in here. And then update the link to point to something else instead, or at least you're aware that there's an issue here. All right. Oh, by the way, if you're looking at the edit form for a content item, I encourage you to use the cancel button if you don't want to save your changes or you don't want to make any changes, because if you don't use the cancel button, there's actually a lock placed on that item. So let me copy this, go to the other window, and I need to just shrink this down a little bit so I can see. So if I were to try to view that content item and then edit it. I know. Sorry, what I was trying to show you is that there should be, normally there will be a little message at the top that says this piece of content is being edited by someone. It's been locked because it's being edited by someone else, and it'll show you the username of the person. And that's a safety feature so that if one person is editing content, another person on the site won't inadvertently start to edit the same thing. Now you can essentially unlock the lock. You can remove the lock if you can tell based on how long ago the lock was placed. Like if it was added to a piece of content 3 weeks ago, probably the person isn't still working on that content edit. And so you can go ahead and grab the lock. But that's a safety feature in Plone that just alerts you that you might want to just talk to the person before you go ahead and proceed to make changes to the same piece of content. The reason why it wasn't showing up here for me is because I'm logged in as the same admin user in both windows. Okay, going back to this folder. So I'm not going to delete that. So you can also rename items, and you can assign tags to items. This is a very powerful feature. So again, if I wanted to add oh, sorry, that's remove. That's not what I want. Here we go. So if I click on tags to add, you can see a list of all the existing tags on the site. So it's easy to just reuse existing tags. What you'll find over time is that people will start putting in multiple versions of the same tag. So somebody might say park as opposed to parks. Somebody might capitalize it. And usually you don't want to confuse your users by having multiple versions of the same tag. There's, maybe not a surprise to you, there's an add-on for Plone that lets you manage tags and consolidate tags that are really they mean the same thing. So that's something to consider for the future. You can also mass publish or mass retract items that you've selected here. And you can also change their metadata. So these are batch operations that you can perform on multiple items. If you look at this configured display columns, you can add different things to the view. So you can say, I want to see an expiration date. I'll hit save. So now I have a new column that shows the expiration dates. This is a very powerful view, this contents form. These icons in the actions column let you open a thing in a new browser window, or immediately edit, or perform some action. So you can do physical sorting of the contents of a folder. And the default page is something that Plone has for folders. If you've got, as you start creating folders on your site, you're going to find that, let me go ahead and add a folder here. So this is a new folder. It's got nothing in it. I'm going to add a new page. The concept, are you familiar with the concept of default items for folders? I'm going to add a couple of more items in here. That looks kind of fun. All right, so if I use the contents tab, button, you can see I've got multiple things in this folder. If somebody visits this folder, if I published it, or even for internal users, if you press the View button in the toolbar, this is what the folder looks like. And currently, it's going to show all of the things in the folder. That might not be what you want. You might want this welcome page to be the default thing that shows up when somebody visits this folder. And if you want that to be the case, you use the display button to specify down here the content item that will be the default view. So if I click that, then I can select any one of the items in here that can be used as a default page. So usually just page items to be the thing that shows up. If I'll hit save.
Setting this default page is viewable from logged in and non-logged in users, right?
That's right. That's right. This is true for all. Well, because it's still in the private state, non-logged in users will not see this. They'll just get taken to a login form. But this is the behavior for the folder after security has been taken into account, because security is the first thing. So now when I look at this folder, you can see in the URL bar, I'm looking at my new folder, but I'm being shown the welcome page for that folder. So if you find that some of your users inadvertently, your editors inadvertently click this display button in the toolbar, they can change it to one of these views. So summary view, for example, could be is just going to be a listing of what's in here. So just be aware as a site administrator or as a content editor, if you suddenly find that a folder has changed its look, that's probably what's happened. Somebody has mistakenly clicked on the display menu and chosen a different display view. So I encourage you to play with this in a private folder. The album view is nice because it shows images in sort of thumbnails. It's very nice. Event listings are usually useful only for folders that contain event items. So tabular views, more for geeky people. like me. So you can just see kind of a listing like this, a very condensed listing of what's in there. But remember, you as an editor or a site administrator, you have access to the contents button, and that view really is the one that you're going to need when you're operating on content. Okay. There are a couple of gotchas that I wanted to mention too, that the workflow state, the state, so private or published or internally published, of a folder affects the visibility or lack of visibility of its contents. So in this case, because my folder is in the private state, as you know, if I were to visit this from the outside as a non-logged in user, I'm going to log out here, and I'm going to paste it back in. If I try to go to that private folder, I'm prompted to go to log in. So that's good. If I'll go ahead and publish this folder. So now the folder is published, although the 2 pages inside, the 2 items inside are private. I'm going to go ahead and try to view the folder. And it says, hey, there's nothing in here, which you'd expect, because the folder's published, but the things inside it are not. If I'm going to change the welcome page so that it's published. Publish externally. Now I'm going to reload this page. And because I selected that weird display, that's not going to help. So I'm going to go back and select the default item. So now I'm going to reload this page. I will see my welcome page. There you go. Now, the trick is this folder, this image, if you look at the state of this image, you can tell that it's red, and in the review state column, it's shown as private. It doesn't have a publication date. And can I change its state? You know what? I cannot. Oh, maybe I can. Let me see. I'm going to leave it private like that. I'm going to take the URL for it. And I'm going to try to view it. It's private too. So just be aware that the state of a thing will obviously maybe affect how the public can view a thing. So when you're trying to publish content, if, for example, you've created a page with a link to this image or this document, be aware that if you publish the page, but you've forgotten to publish the thing that it links to, your website visitors will get broken links, or they'll try to view a thing, it won't look right on the page. And then when they click through on it, they'll be taken to a login form. So these are little things to be aware of. And so they're things that content editors often get tripped up by, myself included. We're getting pretty close to the end. I think I'm kind of running out of time. I wanted to show you some portlets, but I think we'll have to save that for another day. Or perhaps I can just send you, or Joanna can send you the training guide, and it'll explain more how you can set up. I'm sorry, your original question about how can I have people in my department see what's been submitted for review in my department's folder, and portlets are a way to do that. There's also content rules that we can set up on your site that will notify you based on where the content's been published or submitted for publication, can send a message by email to someone responsible for that folder to say that there's this new content that someone in your department has submitted for publication, with a link to the thing that the content reviewer can then click through to and review and then publish. So that's portlets and content rules, which I'm sorry, kind of ran out of time today, but there's a whole lot more here that I'd love to show you. And we didn't get around to talking about how to maintain good quality content, which will be important to you in particular as time goes on and you know, dynamically, organically updating content and changing, adding content to your site. It's important to periodically review the organization of the information and whether certain pages and other content are still relevant, hide them, retract them. So one safe way, by the way, of making content not visible to the public is just to retract it. So rather than deleting it, which loses it forever, unless you need to restore it and you can ask someone to undo the deletion, I would recommend that you not delete very much content, but just retract it. All right, I think I have to turn it over to Joanna. And Nick, I hope, sorry we ran out of time, but there, as you can see, there's a ton to cover here.
Well, I think that maybe what we can do is, because some of these people are experienced users, when we get over to the new site, they can just take off and start doing it, but some of the newer users can start trying things, and maybe we can schedule a follow-up content class, and you could hit some highlights of the things you weren't able to talk about, almost as if, well, now you've got experience, and maybe we can do a Q&A and cover some of the things you didn't cover later.
That sounds good. I think that's perfect.
Yeah, I think.
All right, Joanna, anything else you want to relate to all the people here before I release them?
Yeah, so one of the things that is up on our list, we want to get all of the theming applied, all the color changes that we discussed in our last meeting, and then our goal is to have all of that go through QA and then get released to staging so that you guys are able to start in and playing your environment. When we get to that point, what we do is we will essentially set anything that you put in production also put into your staging environment. We'll do a final content migration, and you know, then we'll determine when we want to turn staging into your production site. So we've got a lot of things coming up still, quite a bit left to do. Just right now we're doing some final cleanup before we do that. But you know, one of the things that we're also going to be doing is running, when we get everything pushed over into staging, we're going to be running that through some ADA compliance to make sure that all of the accessibility is there, and then we'll be reporting back to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you guys very much, and we'll be talking to you.
All right, great. Thank you so
Thank you
much
for your time.
today.
Release the shackles.
Thank you, sir. That is a
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.